Our next presentation is Stephen Harris, and Stephen's been in school-based education for 34 years, with teaching experience across almost every grade from K to 12. He was the principal of Northern Beaches Christian School. Under his leadership, the school has quadrupled its size to become a thriving learning community of 1,200 students from preschool to year 12, as well as having a further 300 online students enrolled in distance online learning courses. He founded the Sydney Centre for Innovation in Learning in 2005 with a vision to embed research and innovation into everyday school practice. He's currently doing a part-time PhD with the University of Technology in Sydney, and his topic today is the School of the Future, Change Management Lessons from a Pioneering School. So please, a big round of applause for Stephen Harris.
Okay, well, good afternoon. Let's get myself set up here. It's great to be here, and I hope as I speak with you now that you don't think that we're the only pioneering school. That was a title that I think was given to us. There are lots and lots of pioneering schools. What I'm hoping to do is to give a bit of a snapshot of the different elements that have been required to bring together, I guess, the change that we've been looking for, and in so doing, inspire you. So I guess that's the purpose of this next 25 minutes. And feel free to catch me afterwards with questions or send the questions via Twitter. Very happy to talk. So, a bit about me. 35 years in school now, getting older. We're located in Sydney. We're about 35 minutes north of the harbour area, for those who haven't been to Sydney before. We do run regular snapshot tours which are free for people to come through and have a bit of a look at what we're doing, and we welcome dialogue with anyone in that respect as well. It's sort of in brief. This is that slide that tells you the entire talk if you want to, just in 30 seconds. I'm looking at the whole concept of how do you align vision, strategy and human resources in the organisation. I guess that question that was asked at the very end of Dan Pink's this morning, the how do you do it? Hopefully I can give a few insights on that from our experience. And I guess the reason why we're trying to do the alignment in our school is that we're trying to promote, accelerate and lead the transformation around the place. Now, some of you will have been to our school, I know that, but many of you have not. Again, I'm going to show some images now for no other purpose other than to provide a bit of a context. So as I talk about the team collaboration and the spaces, you get a bit of an idea. I would give one little disclaimer. What we're on about at our school is not spaces. It's about pedagogy and changed curriculum. So the images here, though, might give you a bit of a context for that. We've drawn from some of the American architectural background, looking at the idea of building spaces which we would call watering holes, campfires and caves. So a watering hole, a space in the school where 2 or 3 kids can get together and work together. A campfire where you can get together perhaps 2,000 people, or it might just be a group of about 25 to 30. A cave space can be anywhere. It's where someone can zone out and work by themselves. We also use the concept of mountaintops. I haven't written that one up. A mountaintop is where we try and allow the kids to go up to the mountaintop and shout out what they've done. So that might be via a blog or a web or something else. The images here are of the inside of the skill building initially. So the Sydney Centre for Innovation and Learning didn't actually have a building at all for the first 4 years of our existence. It was very deliberately a concept that just pervaded thinking across the school. We did have the opportunity, when we decided not to put the books into our new library, to create a fluid space with about 8 areas suitable for up to 200 kids. So I guess what we've worked on was the idea of using all space within a school. One of my personal challenges was, how can we turn 50 learning spaces into 150 choices for where lessons might start? And if I have a vision for where we're heading at the moment, it's the idea of having an airport destination board inside the school, which lets kids know where of those 150 spaces within the school that we've created. And those spaces might be staircases, that little mini palace, And it's very interesting. I asked those guys why did they choose there, and they said, well, it's comfy, it's not like school at all, and therefore we're happy to work, so that they're working on their French. You may be interested. We've worked closely with a company, UFM. I think they're actually together with Siebel in the exhibition hall, if you are interested in that. But we've actually taken on the challenge of saying if we start shaping the environment, that's going to actually help teachers not revert back to where they have come from. And what we've found very interesting is that our students have now become the environmental shapers and the designers of furniture. So we have little tricks like this, a little corner lounge in a room. We got rid of the bells and the word period, decided that period was a bit menstrual, so we got rid of that overnight. And it's very interesting. Put one lounge in a corner of a room and kids rush to class to be the ones that get that lounge first. You don't have to worry about clocks, watches or anything else. Let the furniture motivate them. So just images. So the kids walk in through what we call the brain forest. It's constantly showing a film. So this is all the skill building in its different levels. There's a senior study area upstairs. We took the opportunity of our BER funding to create an empty space down below when we could go up to 12 metres, and we took a year to decide how would we best create a design and technology studio of the future, and this was our answer. It was to create something that was as close as possible to an architect's studio for one half of it, and the other side is a production suite. This probably would be the most effective room in the school, I reckon. Kids can write on all of the walls, whether they're orange or white. They can write on the glass. And we actually didn't buy any furniture for this space. We've just borrowed from throughout the school. Make a little comment here, and nothing against any interactive whiteboards around the place. We found that the best use for the whiteboards in the school have been to remodel them into coffee tables or tables, which actually mean that there's no longer a front to the classroom. The problem with anything that's like an interactive whiteboard or an old whiteboard is it defines a space and says this is the front. And sure enough, half of my teachers will go and stand in the one space every lesson. By making it a table, you actually break away that completely, and it's a great way of utilising old things. So that's the design centre. We wanted to show that you could remodel a classroom and without changing the walls. And in this one here, again, showing that you can create furniture. And again, the trick is to have less furniture than you need, because kids are going to finish up lying on the floor anyway. This piece of furniture there was designed by one of our Year 12 students as his major project for Year 12. Again, replacing a chair, a desk and a locker. I'm sure if you sat down furniture designers to do that, they couldn't have come up with something as creative. Kids called it a racer because they raced to go and use it. We've remodelled our music room this year. Again, the thing about this process that I loved was that I actually had no part to play in the design of it. It was entirely taken over by the teachers and their faculty head working with our business manager, because they caught the vision. So therefore I just passed the entire thing over. So we now have a double music space called Rhythm and Blues. It used to be 2 classrooms and 5 storerooms. The storerooms used to be largely full of broken guitars. Now there's not one broken guitar in sight. There are 3 jam rooms. And there are 2 recording studios, and there's 1 large music lounge with a stage, a bit like some of the, I guess, the old Sydney nightclubs. We've tried the same over in kindergarten. Took on the challenge of saying, could we create spaces where there were no desks or chairs, but there was a lot of fun? So we created our jungle huts. Again, you can write on them. You can put covers on them. You can change them. We've made furniture that's a bit like Lego. For the kids that need to have a little bit of quieter space, but you can write on those tables as well. In Year 1 and 2, created that one, there's a wharf. We've got a truck and a boat and a couple of bridges. Again, writing spaces for 58 kids if we need them, but in the meantime, lots of fun. The zone, another area, it's our renovated old library and 4 awful classrooms. It was completely gutted. We put a lot of money into the acoustics of the ceiling, because this is a classroom space for 180 kids and 6 teachers who work like a team every day, all day long. They're not 6 classes, it's actually 1 class of 180. And when you think about the conversations that are held around in Australia, should the classes be 25, 24, 23, whatever else? Rubbish, it should be 180 with 6 quality teachers. That's the issue. Some images here to show how the zone program works. So every day, a quarter of the day is literacy, a quarter is numeracy. And then for half of the day, it's integrated studies matrix using a combination of Bloom's, Gardner's, habits of mind, and a whole range of different things. We haven't had to have one child sent out of this program for in-class misbehaviour for 3.5 years now. So that if nothing shows you that it works, it works. But as I'll mention shortly, the key to this program working is that the teachers are a little bit like a crack soccer team or a netball team, where they are watching the move of every other teacher every second of the day, and then if they need to come in and around behind and run a little just-in-time workshop to help out something else, they are a completely highly energised team, and then the kids now drive the process basically by themselves. You go in there and you ask them, what are they actually doing? They know exactly what they're doing. They can actually articulate the pedagogy. And what we love is when visitors come to the school, we sort of say, just tell us if you can find somebody who's not engaged in that space, because we'd love to sort of work out what we can do to change it to make it better. That middle section used to be part of an old library. Apart from the kids who are working there, and it doesn't refer to any of the kids in this image, but we found a very good space for kids with autism or Asperger's, because they can sit there and watch and they feel a little bit comfortable in that space, and they thrive. So that's images. You can write on all the walls there, and the kids have all got their own devices. So that was just rapid snapshots taken within 5 minutes around the space, the different things that are happening. At the start of the week in that program, the kids all sit at a pre-assessment. If they score a certain level, they can then opt out of the work in that unit for the rest of the week and continue with their own project, because they already know it. They'll resit the test on Friday and then and go through. So that we did that in literacy and in maths. So what are the lessons that we've learnt from our journey? This is the part that I really want to get onto now for the next quarter of an hour. Change management is about shaping the learning culture at every level of the organisation. So it's something that has to be fairly aggressive. And as I said there, learning culture needs to be subliminal, the subliminal dominant culture, so that when kids walk in through the school gates, it's not like you're having to say anything to them other than welcome. And as they come into the school, you know that the dominant culture that's going to actually become stronger than whatever is in their mind, stronger than the shopping, the surfing, the video, whatever else it is that's been pervading their morning, that learning is the adopted culture. And you've actually got to connect a whole range of elements. And so I've tried to list some of these down as I've thought through for today's talk. It involves constantly growing staff. So that means that in my mind, I don't want to have any staff meeting that goes for longer than 30 minutes. And in fact, I don't like to have any staff meeting, because all times that staff should get together should be staff learning, and as much as possible put the staff into a project-based learning context themselves for what they're doing. Very rarely do we actually have a whole staff meeting like this. Possibly we would have it for about a quarter of an hour in the year when I would speak to the staff, because we've got to actually put our actions where our minds are, and say that if we really want staff to change, they have to experience the change themselves. We actually have to empower our students, and that's a mindset that says that everyone, right down to kindergarten now in that classroom that you saw, no longer do we actually have the child's name typed up and then put onto the desk, and that's their desk for the year. The kids choose where do they sit for this particular task based on their understanding of how they work and how the space works. So again, empowering kids at every level. I've just come back from visiting the States for a couple of weeks, and also being in New Zealand last week for an Architects in Schools conference. What's the common story is that there's a growing gap in all of our schools between the Gen X parents and their ability to understand what needs to change. So I think one of the urgent tasks that I know that we actually have to all engage with is to grow our parents, and behind that we've got to grow our politicians and grow our government's capacity to actually know what should be happening. Collaboration at every level. So if a person comes in stressed about something that's happened to their child, my response has to be, how can I grow you in my mind? How can I grow you? How can we collaborate? Because together we're going to solve the problem. And collaboration has to be at the core of all teaching activities. You've got to question everything. You know, if there's a child that finishes up in strife, I guess the question in my mind, what could we have done differently? What could we actually alter? What could we adjust? What could we throw out in order to make sure that that child finishes up in a context where they're not getting into trouble? And taking risks. I think I learnt the best lesson back in 2005 when I was very lucky to receive a Macquarie University travel grant, went to Iceland and amongst other places, and the Icelandic Ministry for Education had as their mantra in Icelandic, basically, do then think. And as I thought that one through, I guess that one pervaded my thinking all the way through, and if there's any one thing that has enabled us to change, it's that taking risks. We've got to create curriculum, and that's no small task. We have to develop spaces around that. We have to align the budgets, we have to learn from failure. This is following up from lots of points that we mentioned this morning, and we have to celebrate success. Avron, who I think is somewhere here, gave this quote last week, the furniture guy, invent the future, don't prevent the future. I love that. I'm going to use it because I think in many ways that's what we've got to say to our staff, to our parents, because the future for our kids is something that we can't even imagine. So people come to visit us and they come to see the buildings and the spaces, that's fine. Hopefully they leave challenged by what they've seen and the change pedagogy, the curriculum integration, the collaboration and the high performance teams, the different things that we expect. You can read that one there. I guess I heard this was a friend of mine from San Diego first gave me this little metaphor. I think it's fantastic. Because I think this probably captures how every Australian teenager views secondary education in this country at the moment. So why change? I'm not going to give you too many reasons for why you should change, other than I'm going to talk you through very quickly some of the key things. Interesting context, we've got Generation X leaders who are leading Generation Y teachers who are teaching Generation Z students. It's a recipe for stress going through. I've been to conferences where we're supposed to be focusing on 2025 or 2030. I guess my strong point now is that the kids who are being born at the moment, they'll be graduating into the 2030s. We have to have 2050 in our mind or 2100 because it frightens the heck of me that grandchildren will actually be having to cope with a world where there's global warming of +2 or +3 because it could mean that the mammal population in the world, including humans, gets wiped out. There's a lot of urgent issues. This is some of the stuff which has informed my thinking in the last couple of years. This is a fantastic free download from the web, the New Zealand government, very forward thinking in what they're doing because it's actually shaping their furniture. Another free PDF from the Innovation Unit that looks at PBL, based a lot of that on High Tech High in America. Greg Whitby from Sydney, from the Catholic Education Office, Parramatta, great book, came out this year. Another free PDF, Oceans of Innovation. The last part of this should frighten everyone. Now, we also know that the pace of innovation will continue to accelerate in science and technology, posing all of us the challenge, can the search for social solutions that seize the good from science and technology and prevent the harm keep up? This is a pretty compelling book. It's only a short essay, but it's basically pointing out that the economic power of the world is shifting back to Asia and the Pacific, and we're right in the middle of that. Two other books, free downloads from IDEO. The Design Thinking for Educators, and this brand new one from the Innovation Unit, Redesigning Education as part of their Global Education Leaders Program. I did note that this week, this isn't an ad for Amazon, but it's down to $9.99 or something. It's down about $30 on its normal prices if you are interested in that one. It's good to have a bit of a model for our ideas. You can go onto the internet and very easily download this one, so that the Denison model of cultural change looks a bit confusing there, looks even more confusing with all of that, so I've broken it up for you. There are basically two sides to it. There's the external focus and the internal focus. So on the external side, you're looking at adaptability and the mission of the organisation. On the internal, the involvement of people and the consistency of that. So with the external focus, you're looking at how do you create change? How do you actually have that customer, I guess in our case it's the students, focus, and the organisational learning that is required to match the direction of the school. The mission, you've got to have that strategic direction very clear. There's got to be the goals and objectives and vision. I've often described vision to people as like throwing a large star up into the sky, and that you hope that you can throw it up so high that the stardust will cover the entire organisation so that every person is aligned with that vision. Involvement, internal focus. You've got to actually empower individuals, whether they are the students or the staff. That's actually a key focus, which means that school leaders, you've got to be hands-off. That vision has to be strong, so you've got the leaders doing it. There has to be team orientation at every level, and we're not talking about going to Starbucks and having a coffee together. It's actually core team involvement, just as if you were in a netball or a soccer game, where you are watching the move of every other player in that team. And I was talking with Chris Bradby, who's the Deputy Principal at Stonefield School in Auckland last week, and we're going to try and come up with a new lexicon of terms to do with collaboration, because there's nothing we can find at the moment in any literature which truly describes what teachers have to be doing. And we've got to be building capacity at every level as well. From that consistency, you've got to expect that every teacher in the school understands the core values intimately and that they are in agreement with them. Schools are not mortgage-paying institutions for their teachers. They are schools for kids. And so therefore, every person who is there has to be in agreement with where you are going. And you've got to coordinate that process so that you are shaping that agreement every day. It just doesn't happen. You've got to build it. So you've got to ask the big questions. You know, who are we? How do we learn? What are we prepared to change in order to maximise engagement? And what if we believe that every person can be successful? Again, I saw a boy last week who'd been expelled from 5 schools in New Zealand, and he was at Stonefield School. I couldn't believe that he'd ever been expelled, because he was the most engaging person explaining Raspberry Pi to me, which I had no idea what the computing code and stuff beforehand. And then he took me around the school, and I thought, how did all of those 5 schools not see the spark in your eye and your capacity to teach? Ask the questions. How do I learn myself? How do I want to learn? Where do I want to learn? I no longer work in at a desk at home. I wander mobile. What spaces do I use? Do I like? Do I need? I went to Vivid last week. There's some spaces there that were pretty outstanding. And that's perhaps where real learning takes place. But I have to grow a team who intimately understands paradigm shift. And I've got to establish and broadcast that vision with them that we have collectively shaped. It's not about me, it's about what the team is starting to work up. We've got to know where we're heading, and we've got to be prepared to embed that with consistency. And so that means that you've got to actually be working on people skills every day at every level if you're going to genuinely achieve that. And you've got to be attuned to each other. So at the heart of the school, education is about, and learning is about relationship. Now, if we can't get the relationships right, then it's going to collapse. And it's about team. And I watched the teachers' jobs change from being behaviour modifiers to becoming creative directors of curriculum. And they're energetically creative, and they're passion-driven and high engagement. In BYOD, it's now going to be from next year from year 3 upwards. It's from year 5 upwards at the moment. We have no issues with that. I think we've had about 2 students in 4 years who've actually, one stood on his laptop in the bus, and another one did something we're not quite sure, possibly put it in the washing machine or something else. But beyond that, you know, we've had no issues. Writable surfaces, everywhere you can, whether it's desk, walls, glass, get the kids to write, to think through. And you've got to connect and share and have multi-age spaces. I mean, the kids go home to a lounge room of multi-ages. Why separate out, you know, year 7 from year 10, when year 7 and year 10 music could work together perfectly? Have different precincts around the school, make it a bit of fun, and pervasive Wi-Fi inside and outside. Get rid of the separation of the old model. This is the most devastating part of the old paradigm, is that we were taught to be separate teachers with separate programs, teaching in separate rooms and in separate spaces, and that meant that when there was one relational breakdown, perhaps student-student, parent-student, teacher-student, pressure cooker of emotions, and the entire thing collapses. Find the schools from whom you can learn, engage with them, and then engage with the design process, take the risks, embrace failure. Some of the places we've gone to, we've looked at places, we run a vision tour every October. You're very welcome to ask me about that. This is not an advertisement for that, but we go and we have a look at places that can teach us. This is a university space in Delft. It taught us a lot about clever use of books as a backdrop rather than the actual practice. ESSA Academy, which is just out of Manchester. Again, the one space, classroom, welcoming, reception, all happens in the area there. I learnt a lot from Vitra in Stockholm about the idea of how can you actually subfill a large space. That's Vitra as well. It's, I guess, a coffee shop in Berlin. Whenever I go into a coffee shop, it's the spaces that I like. That's the Carriage Works in Sydney. I keep thinking that would make a fantastic school. We've taken those ideas to create a school for ourselves. We're going to get rid of some of our old blocks in the next couple of years, and our architects come up with a vision which was basically based on Avatar, where the trees are the columns, the glass solar cells on the roof become the living photosynthesis of the building, providing the electricity, and we're going to bring the gardens inside. So we're going to try and create that space which is at the one time social, food and learning, divided up in small ways without actually sending the kids outside. Very quickly here, the red paradigm, that's the old model. New models, those of us, everyone trying to go into new directions, we're caught in that tension because we cannot leave the old paradigm because of the assessment systems. So many things have changed. You can read these, this will be common in all of your schools. You know, learning is no longer about pushing onto the kids, it's the kids pulling it in. That's common. I'm sure most of you actually are very, very familiar with that. So this is where design thinking comes in. That's the model that we use. If you want to contact me afterwards, I can actually sit down and explain that one to you. We were asked by PricewaterhouseCoopers to come up with a model that actually best enabled us to help change the wider culture. I come in at the observation level, and with a team we sort of shape the vision, immediately allow that vision to grow. It's not our vision, it's the vision now for the entire organisation. So teachers and kids and parents can all grow it, the ideas flow, the teachers come in with the action, and then we evaluate. So we're aligning everything together. Don't design future problems into your school for someone else. Think long term, not short term. That's some of the things that we think about as we design spaces. We've learnt lots of lessons, but the biggest lesson I've learnt is that vision is the key thing that will hold the entire organisation and the change together. And then secondly, you've got to work on collaboration skills every day, because people have never been taught that. Teachers have never been taught it. And we actually have people working on the ideas phase, on the prototyping phase and the embedding phase, which has meant that our new leadership model in the school is focused around 4 areas. We've got some executive focused on growing people, some executive focused on logistics, some of the team leadership are focused on that whole community focus, and then we have this team of SAS troopers who can be dropped into any part of the school and accelerate the change. We've got to stop the old practice. Feel free to stay in touch, and as it said there, that's my email address, Twitter address. Very happy to have a conversation during the next day and a half as well.
Round of applause for Stephen Harris. Stephen, stay there for 2 seconds. We've actually got time for 2 very quick questions. While our question people find, if you've got a question, put your hand up and we'll get our roving mics to come to you. Otherwise, we've got a couple of mics down on the floor here. So with the kindergarten kids, the writable spaces, the parents have got you to blame when they come home and draw on the walls, have they? Or?
We have we have little lessons with the kids and say you can do this here, but not necessarily at home. Going through. But one little story. I remember one parent who actually was worried about their child coming into kindergarten, and they needed to have a sponge cushion and Ritalin and everything else to keep them restrained. And I just said, give them a chair that can rock.
Yeah, sometimes very, very simple solutions are very elegant. Just down the front here, just your name and your question. Number 4.
Derek Bartels, Stephen. That was fantastic. Just a quick question. In growing your teams at SCIL, do you have to have a list of non-negotiables as well?
What do you mean by non-negotiables?
Oh, well, growing your teams there in terms of embracing agility and innovation.
Okay, I guess that's as we've grown the teams, people are all at different levels. Our little trick has been that I encourage staff to go for any award they can. Whatever money that comes in, we actually use that to grow our team by taking teams together and visiting other schools. But not just other schools, we actually go to design studios, other spaces, and we meet people who are going to inspire the team. But in that process, the team will grow together. So I guess we're not allowing team just to happen casually. It's a very, very constructed process.
Thank you.
Stephen, what dare I ask, and I think there's probably a simple answer to this one, you know, that some things are easy and relatively cheap to do. What does, you know, a transformational change like that cost, and then how long does it take?
Okay, one little example, I was, or perhaps two quick examples, will be very fast. I was speaking at an Architects in Schools conference in New Zealand last week. I asked 400 architects to design a new fish and chip shop. 398 drew a room with a changed bench. One person located it over the ocean, one person on a potato field. Now, and I guess part of our thinking is that we do not think outside the square. And secondly to there, we've got our Year 11s designing cardboard furniture at the moment because we've got a couple of rooms in the school. One's called Berlin, a bit edgy, a bit grungy. We actually want to put the cardboard furniture into there. I mean, you don't have to have the big budget. Start with the kids and their inspiration and make it a project for the kids.
Combine that with some hard thrash music from the music room, I think, to make it true Berlin.
That's exactly
so
right.
Another round of applause for Stephen Harris. Thank you so much, Stephen.